computer. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I know so many people couldn't be here today, but wanted to hear all the things we're going to talk about. So welcome. And it's been quite a week for all of us. And it felt so good this morning to be at Havdalah with all of your children and to see everybody there in the big room. It just was a really good feeling. Anyway, I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to introduce Kristen, who is a mom here at the school, and she offered to put this together for us, and it's really, really nice and helpful. So, Kristen, I'm going to switch places with you, and people let you know. They can if they're on, but I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So, okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining from remotely. And thanks for those of you guys who are joining here. So I have a couple handouts that I'm going to leave with Tara and also give her an electronic version of some books that I think would be helpful. But when thinking about how to talk to your kids in this scenario, I've got some tips to offer. So number one, customize. And this is because every child has experienced something different in this capacity. And even kids within the same household have experienced something different. And that's because each child is going to bring to bear their own awareness, their own preoccupations, their own sensitivity, their own curiosities, and their own knowledge. So if you're thinking about how to approach even multiple kids within the same house, be mindful that they might need a different message, a different discussion. The second thing to think about is to let your child lead this conversation. And, you know, if they know nothing and you want them to know something, then obviously you're going to do a little bit more leading. But when talking to kids after an event like this, we have so much knowledge. We've been watching the news. We've been tracing everything and, you know, amassing all the data. But thankfully, we've been trying to protect our kids from knowing quite as much as what we know. And so there can be a temptation to overshare and to give them more than what they need. And so what you want to do is allow your child to be able to come to you with questions. And so that being said, just personal example, thankfully, we were not directly hit by any of the tornado. And so I thought, all right, we've got a 2.5-year-old. We can just kind of blissfully stay in this not knowing world. And we don't have to talk to him about it because, we escaped it. But then I started watching the little threads that were being discussed through the school, through Story Park. And I could see that classmates were talking about broken trees, broken houses, things of that nature. And I thought, oh, we're going to go back to school. And even though we may have bubbled him in this scenario, he will not be, the bubble will be popped once we get to school, both by hearing people talk about it, but also seeing the campus. So while we keep him home in this safe little space, great, nothing looks or feels like it's changed. We had a, wild fun adventure in the bathtub with flashlights and mattresses, but, that was very fun. And he doesn't connect what happened. So we're going to have to be mindful of how we talk about it, so that when he gets to school, sees things different, talks to classmates, he's got some context for it. And in this regard, I think about talking about this tornado, kind of like how you're going to talk about sex when they get a lot older. They're going to learn a lot of things from other people. But you would like them to learn the basics from you and first. So be thinking about what you want your message to be. Okay, so third point, how do we actually craft the message? What do we want that to be? In that regard, I think you want to follow two main goals: validate feelings and provide facts, okay? So the validating the feelings part is really, really important. And that means when you're hearing your child talk about what questions they have, when you're seeing the expressions on their face, you're watching their body language, you're seeing what questions they're not asking, what things they're avoiding, you want to be able to reflect that. Gosh, you seem really curious about what happened to all the trees at school. Or you seem really sad that some of the parts of the playground are not the way that they used to be. You're going to reflect the feelings: curiosity, sadness, worry. You seem worried that another storm like this might happen again if you hear them asking questions related to that. So you want to really honor those feelings, let them have those feelings and hold those for them without quickly following it up with a but that's never going to happen again, but we're going to fix all the trees, but there are more trees, but there are other buildings, whatever it might be, right? And obviously I'm using examples that are kind of relevant to what we can see and feel here, although I know that many of the families have had a far greater impact. And so again, you're going to go deeper and answer more questions for kids who've had more of an impact and keep it more general and less detailed for kids who haven't. So with all of that, I do have, with this point of validating feelings and then providing facts, when you provide the facts, facts are often really helpful in managing anxiety and in managing worry, because our brains can expand and just make up a whole bunch of stuff that feels really worrisome. And when you can come in and provide facts about the likelihood of this kind of event happening again, the frequency of things like this, the likelihood of, getting hurt or injured. A really great fact in this scenario is, to my knowledge, miraculously, no one died in this tornado and no one was truly seriously injured. And so what a powerful fact to be able to share with your child, that sometimes with storms this powerful and this big and with this much wind, the people all took such good care of ourselves and we all got to safe places such that nobody was hurt. And that's a really powerful fact, right? So we use those facts then when a child is saying, oh, but it might happen again. Okay, all right, and it did. And if it happens again, what are we going to do? And let's come up with a plan. And so I brought a couple resources today. Again, I'm going to leave them with Tara here, and she will also have links to these. I found these online in preparation for today. One is, we've got just text here, is that I'm going to take a look. Yeah. To make sure it's still streaming in the way it's supposed to be streaming.
Oh, it's just,
This is new to me.
It's just Megan's on. Hi, Megan.
Okay.
You can hear us.
Hi.
So this is one. These are resources through the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And a couple psychologists have pulled together these little, very simple, they look like coloring book stories. I just printed 2 pages per page. This one is about Trinket and Sam, the swirling and twirling wind. This one is about a tornado. And then we have Trinket and Sam, the rainy, windy day. This one is about a hurricane. These were developed in the past few years. I actually like the hurricane one more than I like the tornado one.
We're from South Florida.
Okay.
So, yeah, and that's why this is so. I was really coming today for my 5-year-old who had a million trillion questions about this, and my 2.5-year-old, he has a bit of a speech delay, so I was like, oh, he's like to your point, I'm in a bubble, I'm cool, I don't really have to. The minute we got out of the car and I was shocked, he looked towards the gardens and he goes, where trees? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, and he goes, he kept looking around, and because he kept going foggy, because I kept saying, oh, it's foggy outside, so he was like, it's foggy. And then he goes, where trees? So I was like, what?
I know.
The fact, and I mean, that to me was super eye-opening. That's why, I was like, I'm definitely going to this. Because Nixon, who asks a million questions, under the sun, needs this. But I read that hurricane one before. And I haven't read the tornado ones. I haven't had any. So really good.
This one talks, thank you for that insight and that really share. Good. The tornado one talks a lot about basements. And we don't have those here for the most part. And this this might be appropriate for a family who has actually weathered significant damage. It's showing the home getting cracked and torn up. And this one basically speaks a little bit more to the trauma. This one is much shorter. It's half the length of this one. And if you're reading to a child who doesn't yet read, you can simply swap out the word tornado for hurricane and the whole story continues to make sense. Mm-hmm. But it talks about, it's a great resource in terms of talking about the feelings that the children are going to have, the ways the parents say, there's one in particular where the mom is on the phone and, the little one's like, Mom, I need you. And she's like, I need to make some calls. I need to write some things down. I need to make dinner. And then the mom turns and says, I see that you need me. And, gives a hug. And so it's a great discussion of kind of the interplay of everyone's emotions throughout all of this. And how in the end, life does get back on track and it returns to many of the normal things that we experience. In the back of each of these are pretty thoughtful ways to use the story, key points to remember, thinking about your child, ways you can help your children, ways you can help yourself. And so that brings me to my fourth point of the 5, which is that we have to take care of ourselves. And so you mentioned briefly that your little one saw your shock.
I was shocked. Not that I give him credit. Like, he says more than we all think he's saying half the time, because a lot of it's like a jumbled sentence.
Right.
But the minute he got, I picked him up out of the car to be carried in, and he looked right towards the gardens, and he goes, "Where trees?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "It's foggy. Where trees?" And I think he thought the fog was
right.
In
and
his
he probably
way.
also sensed,
but he knew, and he looked around, and he's as we're I put him down as we're walking, he's just looking all around the parking lot, because he could see that it was. He noticed it was different, and I did not think he would. I should give him more credit. I just didn't think he would even, because I've been talking to Nixon so much about it.
Kids pick up so much more than you give
and we're in
credit
Plano,
for.
so we're in West Plano, so we
Bubble,
totally
right?
I haven't come in this direction all week. So.
And so, kids are going to pick up so much.
Yeah.
And then, and that means, so if they are noticing missing trees and things that you didn't think they would notice, they're also noticing you. And they're noticing stuff on your face and in your affect and in your tone of voice and in your body. Never before have I been more acutely aware of our responsibility as parents to manage our own anxiety in favor of shaping our child's experience as when I was in the tub with our newborn and, our son, who's waving his flashlight everywhere, and my husband. And, my son, right in the eye. And I'm like, hey, let's not go there. But I thought, oh my goodness, this can either be a really harrowing and scary experience because I'm panicky and showing it, or if I can manage my own as best I can, then he and, our kids are going to have a more positive experience. All the research shows that how a parent manages his or her own anxiety and the way you interact with your child is a really powerful factor in terms of shaping your child's anxiety and your child's response to stress. And so not only do we want to be aware in those moments that are really acutely anxiety producing, but we also want to be self-aware in the broader experience. And obviously in the aftermath of a storm like this, there is tons of stress. There are tons of to-do items, tons of change. And so whatever you can do to shore yourself up will inevitably directly benefit your child. And the fifth piece to keep in mind is to reach out and ask for support. If at some point you feel that this is bigger than you are noticing changes in your kids that we would expect some acute reaction to stress following an event like this. But if it's been a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, and you're still seeing perseverative questions, the same questions over and over again, you're seeing get played out, excuse me, in your child's play, if they're reenacting it in a way where they seem kind of stuck, if they're asking the same kinds of questions over and over, or if you're seeing worried, unusual, off-baseline behavior that's totally unrelated to tornado or storm, but you're just thinking, man, what is this? This is not my child. This is not how we normally are. That may be the point to look up, to reach out, to ask for additional support. And so I know that Tara has a list of providers in the community who have agreed to provide support and have availability. There are lots of wonderful people in our community who have specialty in stress and trauma and training. And we, for example, have some people in our practice who are happy to help out. And so reach out and ask for the support that could be helpful either for you or for your child, but know that if it's helpful to you, it will be helpful to your child. So with that said, any questions?
So you said give it a few weeks it hit us directly. So my daughter is she's been a mess since then. That's the only way I could put it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not her. She's been acting out. She's usually super independent, wants nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
Always running around with everyone. And she has just been glued to me, will not leave me. And every noise she hears, she's like, is that the storm? Is that the storm? Is that the storm? I'm like, no, it's an airplane. Is it going to rain today? No, it's not going to rain today. And it's just over and over. And then she's really been acting out.
Yeah.
A lot.
How old is she?
She just turned 30.
Okay. All right. So with that description. First of all, everything you're seeing and hearing is, although you wish it not to be the case, it's very typical for what she's experienced. And so kids will often, these stories actually do a lovely job of talking about how, the little mice are breaking rules and not following instructions and getting in trouble at school, and that they're not used to experiencing those kinds of things. Kids will often act out and externalize when they are really stressed and overwhelmed. The fact that she's also startling and thinking that she's hearing the storm when she's hearing loud noises, that she's hypervigilant, that is another really common symptom after a trauma. The fact that she wants to be right near you, that tells us that she feels safe when she's with you, and she wants to just be with you all the time to be safe. So all of those things are very common following an event like this. But in her case, I probably wouldn't wait for a couple of weeks. She's showing you that she's distressed. Your instincts are on, that she's not herself, and that she's needing, and that obviously makes it hard for you to live your normal life. Right. She's like glued to your leg and you're having to reassure her so much. So that would probably be a situation where when you are directly impacted, there's no need to wait a couple of weeks. If you know she's impacted and your family's impacted, then I would simply reach out starting now. And what that looks like, it means finding a therapist who has and for a child as young as 3, you're looking for a play therapist. So you want to find a therapist who specializes in trauma. And so trauma and anxiety. Afterwards, I'm happy to give you names. We've got a couple people at our practice who have that exact specialty, but a lot of people in the community who do that as well. And it doesn't mean that your child is going to be in therapy forever. Right. You want to go in, meet with a therapist, describe all the symptoms and all the changes in their behavior, hear what this person recommends. They might be able to give you just resources that you take home and do yourself. Though depending on your child's reaction, it might be helpful for her to actually be in the therapist's office and to be assessed through play. And it's not sitting a child down and saying, tell me about what happened to your house. Tell me all of the things that happened and how you felt and how your mom felt. No, that's not what we do in play therapy. We put them in a room with selected toys that enable them to play out their worlds. And their play is their language, and the toys are their words. And so it's a really beautiful medium where she leaves and she's like, man, that was great. I had a good time.
My older son did it for nothing to do with the storm, but it helped him with anxiety in school in terms of just becoming part of a class and things like that. And he did amazing with it.
It feels really non-invasive for the child, but you then know that you're providing this meaningful resource. And so, I would at least do an initial assessment with a therapist to see what tools might be helpful for her in that scenario.
Good question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, you guys were directly impacted.
I try and downplay it for myself because it, like she said, it still affected you, but I didn't have as much damage as, half the people on my street. So in my head, I'm thinking, we were the lucky ones, but I'm still feeling bad about this. And it did affect us as a family in our house. But I see other houses like two houses down, and you're just
like that survivor's guilt type thing.
And I think
like that.
That's a piece where I hear, your brain tries to do 2 things in that scenario. You try to basically tell yourself, okay, it could have been worse. And, look at all these people. At the same time, I would say give yourself permission to have the feelings you feel about what's happened to your home. It's your home and that's your family. And regardless of what's happened to anybody else on the street, your experience is your own. And just that is worth honoring. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
One more resource. So I'm leaving with Tara also a list of, these are books that our practice, here I'll pass these around. These are books that our practice has pulled together over the years that we think help with any number of things. And so again, you don't have to find a tornado-specific book to help your child during a time like this. What we have here are books that have to do with anxiety, separation, bravery, identity, what makes us special, finding one's own path, problem solving, etc. This is a smattering of everything from, your Sandra Boynton board book that's appropriate for a 2-year-old all the way up to picture books that are appropriate for kind of 5 to 12. So these are some of our real favorites. And I do love Invisible String. I have to put a specific shout out to Invisible String, which is on the front page here. It has to do with separation anxiety and how we can all stay connected to each other through our invisible strings, even when we're not in the same room and not with one another. And then what didn't make it on here, because I found it after I created, I found this last night actually, is one you can find off of Amazon called A Terrible Thing Happened. So that's A Terrible Thing Happened by Margaret Holmes, Holmes. I'll leave that with Tara as well. And what I like about this one is that we don't know what the terrible thing is. So it's a very applicable book because it could be anything. And it's represented by just this kind of dark, stormy red and gray cloud that is in a little thought bubble above the raccoon's head. But it talks about this thing that just kind of stays with us, and we worry about it, and we feel it in our tummy, and we feel sweaty palms, and sometimes it makes us do things that we don't normally do. But in the end, we can talk to a helpful adult, and others can help us manage our feelings about the terrible things that happen. So with all of that said, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to us in our practice. We're happy to help and happy to connect you guys with other people in the community who can be helpful. And I think if there's one thing that you want to drive home with your kids about all of this, is to talk about how remarkable the support system has been. Like, if you've been anywhere involved in this, you can see that here at the J and everywhere else, people are reaching out and doing so much to help and support one another. I've talked to families who've invited other families to live with them. I've seen incredible things happen. And that's what you want to point out to your kids, is that even though really hard things like this can happen, we have incredible people and friends in the world, and we do everything we can to support one another during these times. And that is as powerful as any storm could ever be. Thank you.
So, yeah, I just want to thank you, Kristen, for doing this. And the fact that you emailed me right away and said, would you like something like this? That's a perfect example as one of the helpers. And one thing that we always think about, always remember, is Mr. Rogers, right?
Yes.
You remember what Mr. Rogers
So
said? He said, when something bad happens, you always have to look for the helpers. And that's something really good that we can also share with our children. So thank you for being one of our helpers. Thank all of you for just supporting us in every single way. And you gave some really great tips. And all of you who couldn't be here, we'll make sure you get everything that she talked about and the handouts and everything. And thank you guys for your support. This week we've made it through because of the support from everyone. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna stop.